Thank you. Hi again, welcome. Thank you for joining. My name is Amber Zeuner with the Miller Elder Law Firm. And today we're going to be here to talk about some emergency preparations and situations we might want to consider, how we're going to prepare for them in advance. Joining me today, we do have Jolisa Byers, one of our elder care coordinators, to kind of help guide us on some of these tips and tricks for preparation and even special circumstances you might want to take into consideration for some of our clientele and senior citizens and what they should be preparing for and keeping in mind. Jolisa, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And I know we're both excited to be here today to talk about this because we are coming up into hurricane season. Not that that's the only emergency preparation we're going to talk about today, but it is a big one.
It sure is. And so today we're going to talk about different types of disasters or emergencies. And we're going to talk about basically, there's what, 4, 5, 6 maybe that we need to talk about in Florida. There's a lot more emergencies, but we don't have that issue in Florida like an avalanche. We don't have to worry about
Thankfully.
but we do have the pandemic. We do have hurricane. We do have active shooters. We do have the earthquake. We do have flood and fire. So those are the ones I'll be going over today. So let's start with something there's not much you can do when you have an active shooter except stay away from the area, hide if you can. And if you're in a grocery store, I don't know where you're going to hide unless you can get in the back room and hide back there.
Yeah.
But also when you're in the situation, if you're in the situation, especially if you're a senior, you're not going to get on the floor. I'm going to tell you that and lay low. So basically it's best just to stand still and just, if you can, and you're away from the shooter, dial 911 and let them know there's something going on. But if the shooter is right there,
emergency, yes.
The shooter's right there, just stay calm because you're in the middle and you just stay right there.
I am going to jump in here real fast. I did mention it before the recording, but just so everyone is aware, we are going to be recording this as well. So if you do have any concerns about watching it later, you will get the recording within 24 hours afterward. Also, if you have any questions, feel free to pop them into the chat box at the end. I will be keeping a lookout. We'll try and get to those as we go along or answer them at the end. So as we get going, just keep that in mind. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take a look and see how we can answer those. But yes, active shooters are a major threat. So that is something we want to keep in mind and how we can prepare for that. In other words, staying out of the way, it sounds like.
Be aware of your surroundings. Then let's go into fire. If there's a fire, you need to have a plan for the fire. Whether you live by yourself or you live with family, there needs to be a plan, and your family needs to know the plan. So if you're single and there's a fire, you need to make that plan with them that, okay, I'm going to be here, and if I'm not there, you need to get somebody to help me. Because what happens is it's so confusing when there's a fire. You're going to get out of there as quickly as can be. You're not going back in for your purse. If you didn't grab it on your way out, it's going to get burned. So basically get out of the house as quickly as you can, go to a neighbor, dial 911, but let your family know that if there's a fire, this is where I'm going to be. So
yes,
it's
communication.
Very important, very important.
Especially if I'm gonna add in here as well, if you're trying to get out of a house that's on fire for any reason and you forget your cell phone, it's really important to have that emergency plan in place for where to connect to, just in case you're not able to have that communication after the fact.
Right. Now,
also, really important, sorry, Julie, so I'm going to jump in here one more time, something came to mind. As far as getting out as fast as possible, this is also why we recommend a fireproof, waterproof safe box for any of your important documents to keep them in there. This way, you're not stressing about having to have that to-go bag ready to go 24/7 or having to go back in for those types of documents. They're safe in that box, and you can take care of yourself, making sure you're safe without that stress. So Definitely recommend having something to keep those really important items safe and sound in a situation like this where you're not really going to have time to prepare. It's going to come out of the blue.
That's exactly true. And what some people do is they take their important papers and they put them in a sealed bag, a baggy type seal, and they put it in their refrigerator or freezer because they think that, it will protect it for a while and they will protect it.
Cold.
Yeah, but when the fire hits that, if it hits it too far or burns too hot, they might not be in there when it's
Yeah.
all over. So
So
it's
a
best
safe
to have
box
that.
is really important.
Yes. Okay. So now we're going to talk about the pandemic. Like none of us realized that there was going to be a pandemic in, 2020, 2019, 2020. We didn't realize that was going to happen. So none of us were prepared for it. We were like, well, now I can't go out of my house or I have to wear gloves and a mask. Well, how many people had a mask in their house? I didn't. I had gloves, but I didn't have a mask. So I made a mask so I could go out and buy masks. But then they were no masks. So it was like, oh my goodness. So I think the best thing is, we're not prepared, but we need to start preparing for things like this to happen in the future. Basically, if you keep your hurricane, we're going to tell you about the hurricane, but if you keep your hurricane kit up to date constantly, you should be okay for the next pandemic or whatever else hits us. At least you have most of the things.
Yeah. The only couple items I think that I would note that would differ from a hurricane preparation kit would just, for a pandemic in particular, would be cleaning supplies, really. I think that's one of the bigger distinctions there. Not that, knock on wood, we ever want that to happen again. I like kind of being able to go outside. But having your Clorox wipes, your Pine Sol, the certain cleaning products that you have to wipe counters, doorknobs, different daily used surfaces down to protect yourself as well.
That's true. So now we're going to get into the hurricanes. And the hurricanes, there are some items you need to have available in your home. When you hear that there's a hurricane coming, you need to make sure you have, and this is what they recommend, 2 gallons for each person per day for drinking, cooking in case the power goes out and no water is available. But that depends upon your family size. I mean, if you've got, 8 people there and you're 2 gallons per day, that's a lot of gallons of water that you're going to be having at your house. So that depends. And some people don't drink as much as others. So that's another consideration. But what they're recommending is 1 to 2 gallons for each person per day.
Definitely take into consideration family size and drinking capacity too. I have some family members who constantly have their water bottle next to them. So if you drink more, you might want to prepare for more water.
That's true. And also remember that during hurricane season, it's hot. It's not cold here in Florida. So a lot of people will drink more water during that time because
Yes.
it's so hot because there might not be air conditioning. The next thing is gas. Fill up your car. If you have a generator, get those gas cans full. And store them appropriately. You can't store your gas in your house, so you're going to have to store it somewhere else. And do not start your generator during a storm because, first of all, you're going out in the weather to do it because you're not going to start it in your house or your garage. So you're going to be outside starting this generator. If you have to put gas in it, I mean, you should have that already prepared. So the best thing is wait until after the storm to start your generator. It's usually the storm doesn't last for days. It's just a couple of hours and then it's by you. So then you can go out and start your generator.
It's the aftermath that really is the hard struggle to make sure you have everything ready to go. And just in case, the AC goes out or your water doesn't work or you have some other, issue that happens, it's really important to prepare for the aftermath. The hurricane itself, while scary, usually goes by pretty fast sometimes.
Mhm.
So keeping your generator, off until the hurricane is through, I certainly think that's really important. Also, not to run it in your garage or in your house.
Right. And I've heard that happen. Um, So you also want some food. So you're going to do shelf life food, or you can use the peanut butter, bread, canned milk, shelf life milk, canned meats and vegetables. And here's the thing about the canned foods. Make sure you have a manual can opener, because if the electricity goes out, you're not going to be able to open that. Or get the pop top lids, because that's really important. Even sometimes with the pop top lids, you're still going to need the can opener, because sometimes they break off and then you can't get into them. But
Yeah.
please make
Manual
sure
can
you have
openers,
it.
very handy.
Yeah, very important. We also need to make sure we have medications to last 2 weeks. And I know this has been an issue with our new insurance, that sometimes they won't let you get your prescription until it's time for it to be refilled. But they do allow it, I think it's a week before the hurricane. If they know a hurricane's coming, they do allow you to go get your prescriptions, but you need at least 2 weeks of prescriptions, because you don't know what's going to happen after the hurricane, if the pharmacy's going to be open, if you're going to be able to get what you need. And it's very important to be on your meds. Very important not to miss them.
Yeah.
So we need, all your important information needs to be put in a in some kind of waterproof container. Because if you're going to take it with you to a shelter or your friend's house or your family's house, because you're not going to stay in your house, you're going to need all this information. You don't want to leave it at home. And a lot of it is, your mortgage papers, your birth certificate. Some of the other things are like, trying to think of all of these things.
I can think of a couple documents, the ones we talked about before, that may go usually in your fireproof, waterproof safe box, your estate planning documents, your helper documents, as well as any lists, medication lists that you have that you need to keep up to date. I think this is a really important topic for many people, because as we're preparing for a hurricane to come through, we want to make sure that when it does, we are set as possible to pick up and go if needed. And I think that goes into a conversation that Jaleesa and I were talking about is, do you want to stay at home in one of these situations, or are we going to just be preparing to go to a shelter or a family member's house? And what that looks like and why. Jaleesa, if we want to talk about that for a little bit.
Sure. So basically, there's things you can do. You can go to a hotel. They say you don't have to go far, 8 to 10 miles away from where you are, away from the hurricane. They said you can also, this is all the literature I've been reading, you can also go to a friend's house that's, their house is more stable. Or if you just don't want to be by yourself during a hurricane, you can go to a friend's house. You can go to your family's house. You can also go to a shelter. And there are different types of shelter. There are special needs shelters, and there's a regular shelter. So it depends on what you need. Some shelters do have cots, some don't, and you're on the floor. Especially for our seniors, it's not really good for them to be laying on the floor during this time. So it's either a special needs shelter or a hotel or friend's house, or ask a friend to stay with you if you got a nice house that can withstand the hurricane winds.
Yeah.
But there's a decision to be made, and each decision means something, because if you have a pet, there's a decision to be made where you're going to go, where your pet's going to go. So these are things that you all have to take, everybody has to take into consideration. And then if you decide to stay home, you have an electrical problem. If the electricity goes off, they, the city of, not the city, GRU, does not, in Gainesville, does not guarantee your electricity is going to be turned right back on. It may take a while. But there is the special needs, if you need electricity, there is the special needs shelter that you can sign up for. And they do have certain criteria you have to meet. And then you just fill out a form online, and then you can use their shelter. Because at home, when you're without electricity, it gets hot. And now you don't have a fan, It's the middle of summer or it's later summer and it is hot. So that's a decision for a lot of us to make. Are we going to stay in that heat or are we just going to go somewhere else? And don't make that decision one day before. I'm telling you, you're not going to get out of
I
town.
think it's also important to have a backup plan. You might not want to leave your home per se, but having a place in mind on where you're going to go should you need to, if you do decide at a last minute, is a really good plan to have in place, I think, to have that already solidified and determined.
And your family knows. That's the biggest thing. The
Yes.
communication is that your family has to know where you're going and how to get in touch with you. Also, you know how to get in touch with you. Now we got a cell phone. Electricity's off, your battery goes dead. Do you have a backup charger for your cell phone? You can't, in the middle of a storm, you can't go out and turn your car on and plug it in. I think the best thing is to have a backup charger. And they sell little ones. You don't have to buy a big one because once the storm's over, you can go charge it again. You can go back in your car when you can open the garage and you can charge it. So that's a consideration, is your cell phone and having a charger for it. Now, most of the times I have not seen this, only in really bad hurricanes, where if you have a landline, those of you who still have a landline, they usually stay on during a hurricane. So you usually have
Pros of
access.
landlines. Interesting.
Yes, they usually do, unless it's like, because a lot of them are underground now, so they don't get affected by it as much. But I did notice that my landline did work, but nothing else did. So the last hurricane we had up here. So that's another consideration. Another thing is when the electricity goes out, you have no air conditioning, but after the storm, you can get in your car and go to a store that's open that has air conditioning and shop all day or just wander around to get
Get the
cool.
water that you need.
If there's water there, that's the biggest thing. Water is usually gone. So is bread. Everything's off the shelf. And you also need to make sure you have cash, because during the hurricanes, the electricity goes off, the ATMs don't work, the banks don't open when they don't have electricity. So how are you going to get cash? Now, some people say take traveler's checks and some say cash. So you're not going to take out your whole life savings, in cash. You just need enough to get by for a week or two. So,
Especially if the store's machines aren't working. I've had that happen in the past as well, where they will not accept card because the card readers are down. So having cash is really important for if there is an emergency situation in order to even just buy an emergency necessity that you may need.
that's correct. So each county, I just want to let you know, each county is different. Some
Yes.
counties do have different requirements for the shelters. In our county, we have pet shelter, and it is at the Humane Society, and they open it up for you to bring your pets. But you can also bring your pet at our shelters. You can bring your pet in a crate. But in Alachua County, they don't allow it. They only allow service animals in the shelters. So you need to make arrangements for them to either go to the vet, go to the you can have them go to your pet sitter, whoever you have, if they're staying there, or because some hotels won't take pets either. So there's a lot of decision making to be made with the pet. So the whole idea is to make a plan, and
Yeah.
to make a plan, you need family members there to help you, and you all need to decide, are you going to stay, are you going to go, and you document it. And you document the phone numbers of everybody so that you're going to take that with you in your little go bag. This is my family doctor, this is my daughter, this is my son, these are their phone numbers, how to get in touch with people. You're also going to have your medications. I'm allergic to, I'm on this kind of medication. That's a warning. Like, I'm on Eliquis, so I have to let them know if I get cut, man, somebody better take care of me pretty quick. So there is things that need to be on this form. And there are forms. There's one at ready.gov. There's one at FEMA, which is part of ready.gov. And there's one on actually on Alachua County's management website, emergency management website. They do have a form there. So there's forms to fill out. And I really like some of them, especially the ones for the kids, because the kids form basically has everything on it that an adult would have. You would still have the same, who to contact, and that's at ready.gov/kids. And I was a school teacher, so I know where all those things are. But the kids like it because it's fun. They can color on it while they're at wherever they are, the shelter or sitting in a hotel room, because it's got pictures on it. But to fill that out and to have it available and give a copy to your kids or give a copy to your parents, if I'm talking to somebody that's younger, so they know where you are. Because if you've got an elderly family member that lives in, let's say they live in Michigan, and we have the hurricane, they want to know where you are, and they are worried about you. So you need to let them know this is our plan. This is where what we're doing.
And vice versa. If you have a child who's out of the state, but you're in Florida going through a hurricane, heaven forbid we do have a cell phone that's dead. Having a rendezvous point or a time to know that you'll be in touch is really important. This way they can expect it. And if they don't receive that contact or communication, make sure that they find a way to do so.
Correct. Because that's the hardest thing. So they're calling during the storm or after the storm, we got police doing all other kinds of things. We don't need to be looking for people. So if they know where you are or where your neighbor or somebody that they could, even if it's a church member that that they can contact, but you can be in contact with them, just have a go-between, it would work.
Someone who can step in and make sure that you're where you need to be or that they've contacted your loved ones to make sure that they know how to get in touch with you. Yeah.
So I guess we've talked about everything except for actually what goes in an emergency kit. There's a lot of things that go in emergency kit. And basically it is your, simple things that we usually take for granted. Like I was reading one and it says matches. I said, what do you need matches for? I go, well, in case you're going to light a grill afterwards. But there's also, we do have lighters now that you can have them instead of matches. They want you to have, your first aid kit, a regular first aid kit. They want you to have the water, food. They want you to have your paperwork in your go bag. They also recommend that you bring things in case you have to camp out for a while, which I was surprised about that. But it was like a little hatchet, a little saw, so you can saw in case you have to saw something.
Let's hope we never have to do any of that, though.
Like, oh my gosh, they're asking for all this stuff. I mean, you guys live in the city, I live in the country, so yeah, I could see myself needing that. But they have a long list of things, but I really believe the best thing is by having the water, the food, the medications, your paperwork, and some, flashlight. Please have flashlights.
Flashlights. And more so than flashlights, I think you even said you have like a little battery operated lantern that you can just leave up.
Yep. I have a battery operated lantern.
I have been told not to light my candles though, because that will lead us to the other type of disaster we don't want to have happen.
Right. Right. Now don't put not regular candles. Now you can have the candles that do have they're battery operated. You can use them. You also can, I also have a battery charger for my cell phone that is solar. So after the storm and the sun comes out, you can put it out and charge if you needed to. If it was like we were 3 weeks without electricity, you wanted to charge it. So
or for those of us who don't have a car to do that as far as charging in a vehicle after a storm, if you don't have a car and our electricity is out, having a solar option for some of these would be really advantageous. I can see that.
Yeah. So is there anything else that I need to go over, Amber? Did we go over everything?
I think the only other thought that comes to mind for me would just be making sure that some of the things we take for granted as not always needing, but feminine products, or just some products that we generally have in stock, but not all the time. So keep those in mind, whatever they may be. But I think the main points we hit were water, food, medications are a really big one. And having that plan in place, like you talked about, having the points with which you know where to contact your loved ones, where to keep these documents, and what to take with you. There are a number of different forms out there, like Jaleesa was saying, at some of these emergency preparedness websites that have similar recommendations, but some of them vary a little bit based on, more obscure things you might need as you go, like a hatchet.
Sorry
Uh,
about that. I saw that yesterday.
so just take a look at some of the forms that are out there. One of them, like Julissa said, is ready.gov. They have one. Another one is, and I wrote it down here, floridadisaster.org. They have a form themselves as well. They cover similar items, but some of them vary a little bit and are a little broader for more extensive stays and emergencies. So take a look and definitely prepare ahead of time. And having a plan, I think, is the biggest safety net you can have in place for yourself and your loved ones. Any questions on anything so far? Anyone have thoughts on something that they might have experienced? You can go ahead and put them in the chat now, and we can take a look and see how we can answer them. Okay. I do see we have a hand raised, but we are going to have that question go in the chat in order for us to discuss it.
But while we're waiting, I did not really go over floods because a lot of our, we don't have a lot of floods, but there is times that we do flood. So what you need to do is prepare, if your house is in a low-lying area, you need to make sure you have those sandbags, because the sandbags are very important to seal your house so that water doesn't come in.
Yes.
Um,
No slips and falls happening today.
yeah. And then also, when you're driving, if you're driving and there's floodwaters, don't go in really. Think that's a small puddle, but it turns out to be a really large puddle that goes over your engine and stalls you out, and then you're stuck in water. And then
Yes.
also, if it's running water, be careful. If it's fast running water, do not go into that water.
We
You will.
do have a couple of thoughts here from Beverly as well. These are wonderful additions. A weather radio, Jaleesa, in
Yeah.
order to keep touch with what's happening with the storm. That's a wonderful item to have in place as well, because knowing when it might end and how long you're looking at can make a difference on what your plans are and what your provisions are. Also, having a turn hand crank charging device, a simple, easy to use one. That I can certainly see if you're looking at a long-term stay, your batteries die out, that could be a lifesaver.
Mhm. And
Excellent for cell phone charging, she says.
yeah, I had one of those hand crank ones. It didn't work so well for me, but it was a weather radio that you hand cranked. Took
Ah,
a lot of cranking for me, but the weather radio, they always have them at the stores. So,
and then we do have another suggestion added here from Patricia, taking pictures. Very important of your important documents as well as things you own. This way it's all on the cloud. I've done that myself for insurance purposes personally,
mhm.
but also just to have it. That's really important. And then you don't have to worry about losing it, because if it's on your phone or in your camera, you can always go back to it. Just keep touch with where that item is. And even if you lose that item, uploading it to the cloud, like she said, it's always going to be there. So really handy information.
So there is something else that I've never brought up, but I think I just thought about it. If your parent is in a nursing home or an ALF, you
Yes.
need to contact them for their emergency. If they have to evacuate, where are they going? Because they have to do this for the state of Florida. They have to every year update their emergency plan. So if they evacuate, you need to know where your family member is.
That
And
is so important because
Mhm.
each facility or residential community might have a different plan in place and a different point of contact. So if you do have a loved one that's in a long-term care facility or an assisted living facility, or any of the type, really, knowing what that plan is in case they can't get in contact with you, you can reach out to the main point of contact with the facility to see where and what's going on. That's so important.
It is.
Okay. I think that's all I see here so far. Unless anyone else has other questions, I think that covers everything today. Again, my name was Amber with the Miller Elder Law Firm with Jaleesa joining us. I hope this was helpful and thanks so much for joining us. Again, it is recorded, so you will be getting that recording within 24 hours. So if you want to take a look, it'll also have those links that I said before to find those forms and just see what the distinctions are between them and make sure you have everything prepared for your kit. Okay,
Okay.
wonderful. Thanks so much, everyone, and we're going to wrap up today.
Thank you so much.